right, ladies and gentlemen, now we're really getting into the file of games that I really should have reviewed by now. This is why I change things around, because if I rely on the spinning wheel to choose Giana Sisters' Twisted Dreams, it's gonna take forever. Like, it's been this long and it still hasn't chosen this game. And I really should have reviewed it by now, because this is a gorgeous, incredible, wildly underrated platformer. Yeah, it's true. Did you know this game? If you do, congrats to you and your awesome life that you know this game. If you did not know this game, consider yourself very normal, really. Because yeah, this game has interesting origins, and it is the very definition of a hidden gem. So let's talk about it a bit. This game came out in 2012. There are physical copies of it on whichever consoles were out when the Wii U roamed the earth, because I do have a physical copy of this game for the Wii U, because, yeah, I did not give up on the Wii U. I was one of those weird people who was like, you know what, this console has a lot of good things going for it. And nowadays, like, most of the games that were made for the Wii U have been ported to the Switch. We get it, it's fine, it's whatever. But, like, the fact that so many games from the Wii U were eventually ported to the Switch should tell you something. That it wasn't a fluke console. Sure, it was a failed console, like, they marketed it terribly. Even at the time, I was like, I've already got a Wii. Why do I need a Wii U? You know, Nintendo really botched the Wii U in terms of presenting it to the public. If they had called it anything other than a Wii, it would have been fine, honestly. Anyway, regardless, let's not get off in the weeds talking about the Wii U and why it was a much better console than most people recognize it for. But yeah, that's where I played this game for the first time, and I was blown away. And it wasn't until after the fact that I learned the history. Now, those of you who've been following this channel for some time will know that I have never touched a Commodore 64. Never. Like, I've been around them, I have seen them in person many times, but my fingers have never touched those machines, because I was raised on the Atari 800 XL, the 8-bit Atari line, and they were direct competitors to your Commodore 64, and that's why, like, I'm true to my school, you know? Like, you are to your girl. Anyway, that's a bit of a Beach Boys deep cut. If you don't know that song, I'd sound crazy. Anyway, regardless, here's the thing, is the Giana Sisters started off as a Mario Bros. Ripoff, basically. Nintendo got very upset that game existed, because, you know, you couldn't just make Super Mario Bros. For the Commodore 64, and Nintendo was very much like, nah, we're not porting our games to a bunch of other crap. I mean, even though there were Nintendo games on the 8-bit Ataris, but that's like Donkey Kong and stuff. Once the NES came out, Nintendo was like, we are not putting out anything for these 8-bit home computers. Like, that's not our market. We are strictly games. And so anything that can do word processing, no, we will not put out games on such a thing. So someone, and I don't know the full story, I don't know who, but someone created Giana Sisters as a Super Mario Bros. Type game for the Commodore 64, only it was so similar that Nintendo's lawyers were like, sue them, you know, And there was a lawsuit, and don't quote me on this, because, again, I am not perfect in my knowledge of these things. I could look it up, but that would involve not being lazy. And as we have established on this channel, I am often lazy. So, anyway, so basically, like, yeah, Giana Sisters existed, they got sued, they couldn't make it anymore. That's what I believe happened, because there weren't any other Giana Sisters games for a long old time. Then, like, there was Giana Sisters 2D, which may have come out after this game, even though it looks way older. There was a Giana Sisters on a Nintendo console, like on the Game Boy Color or something. Do not quote me on this. I am not a perfect historian of all things Giana Sisters. But the fact is that, like, it's been a, like, half-dead entity for most of its life. And then in 2012, out comes this game out of freaking nowhere. No one expected this. No one was ready for it. No one knew what it was coming. And by the time it came out, nobody knew. Like, you had to be a, like, Supremo Commodore 64 fanboy to be like, oh my god, they made a Giana Sisters game. Like, to even know what it was. And it's funny because, like, sure, you could have reskinned this, you could have put it out as something else, and no one would have been the wiser. Nobody would have known anything was different. How could you? Like, it's just, you know, it's so out there as a property that really it's not super well known even among those who know a lot of things about video games. And so, yeah, it's a real oddity that this thing even exists. But beyond that, let's talk about what this game actually gives you. What it gives you is a really, really fun, yet quite difficult in many ways, platforming experience. The Giana Sisters are, you know, twin girls who are very different from each other. You got the blonde-haired one who is very girly, and you got the red-haired one who is very punk. And this goes back to the very first Giana Sisters game, where, you know, there was more difference between the Giana Sisters early on than there were between Mario and Luigi. Like, that's generally speaking true. And so, yeah, it's a really fascinating thing. What they did with this game is they created this alternate world system. So the cutesy blonde-haired girl is in the terrifying world, and that's like all nightmares and dark stuff. And the red-haired punk one is in the, like, lush, green, gorgeous world. And so in lush, green, gorgeous world, you are jumping on birds and whatnot. And in the scary monster world, you're stomping on devils and whatnot. Like, it's a very different thing. Also, the two sisters have different abilities. So the blonde-haired one can do this twirl spin where you can control your descent, which is really handy, you know, picking up them gems, which, by the way, this game has insane replayability. Because if you're the sort of person, and I'm not, I will admit that I am not, but I do know people who are. If you are a completist, if you are the sort of person who has to get every single gem, well, first of all, good luck. Second of all, like, oh, there's a ton of replayability in this game. Like, you can't, there's no timer, so you can spend as much time as it takes. You can get almost to the end of the level and then walk all the way back to the beginning if you want to. I mean, provided that you don't die in all that time. And interestingly, the checkpoint system, which is a little hand-waving flag that pops out of these chest-looking boxes, whichever one that you were near last, that's where your checkpoint activates from when you die. And you will die. You absolutely will. Because it is difficult platforming. I have been playing this game, like, I picked it up again recently. You know, I got fairly close to beating it once upon a time. And, you know, I'm trying to check off a bunch of these games and actually beat some of these games that I really care about beating. And that's why I've been playing this one. And, man, it is hard in those later levels. That's why I went back and played earlier levels, because it gets very difficult. Like in the early levels, it's very difficult to get every gem, but it's not difficult to make it to the end of the level. In the later levels, it is difficult to do both. You know, it just gets that way. And, you know, interestingly, they recently added up to 4-player, you know, on screen at the same time, like a new Super Mario Bros. Style type of gameplay for this game, which that would be insane. I can't even imagine what that would be like. That many people on screen and that much nonsense going on all at the same time, like, is wild. And the one part that I don't know how they would figure it out is, like, how do you do the world switching? Because, for example, you know, there are these purplish vines that will kill you if you touch them, that exist in one world but do not exist in the other. And so in order to get through these areas that are covered in vines, you have to flip between worlds. Well, if you got 4 players on the screen, if one player flips, does everybody get flipped? Because then you might die if you're standing where there are no vines in the previous world, and then vines because someone needed, like, to make an invisible platform appear. By the way, one of the hardest things to do in this platforming is to be running through a level and, like, platforming while switching between worlds and indeed characters with different movesets, like, in midair. So, like, and the amount that you do that in later levels ramps up considerably. And so it gets way harder in the later levels. And I am not ashamed to admit that I've been playing this on easy mode. I did start out in the early levels in my first playthrough in normal mode, which is not too bad, but once you get to those later levels, forget about it, friend. Like, it's so hard, and I am not a speedrunner, I'm not a precision platformer, I'm not amazing at these kind of things. I'm, like, merely passable. And, you know, like, the easy mode is still plenty hard, honestly. Because, like, you gotta understand, like, there are so many things where there'll be, like, you know, some sort of booby trap or moving platform or something that is moving one way in one world, and then you have to switch to be able to get across, but then as soon as you switch, it starts moving the other way, and so you constantly have to reorient yourself, you know. It's really problematic. So, but the level design is incredible. My goodness, like, whoever designed these levels is both diabolical and a genius. Like, I don't know what their Mario Maker levels look like, but they've got to be some of the craziest, because, like, there is such immaculate level design in this game. Like, really, some of the best platforming level design I have seen in any game over the last, I don't know, couple of decades, really. Like, it's really, really impressive. It is hard to overstate how well done the level design is in these games, and how very difficult it is to get all of the gems. So, yeah, this game is crazy hard, but crazy rewarding if you can actually make it through. And it might take you a couple of tries. And if you're going to try and collect all the gems, it will definitely take you multiple tries. And one of the really fun things is that as you move through the levels, you will constantly be running across new gameplay mechanics that they'll just casually introduce, like it's no big thing that like, oh, we got nothing but ideas here. Like, we're just chock full of ideas. So if you can't tell, I really, really love this game. Like, it's just so well done, and it's really fun, but it's like, it's definitely challenging, but it's beautiful. Like, it just, like, the visuals are stunning. It's really, really great. It is one of the best platformers out there on any system ever. Like, it really is. It's all-timer level. But it's a hidden gem because a lot of people don't know about it, because it's, you know, a game that was based off of a game that Nintendo sued the creator over like 40 years ago. It's, yeah. It's weird. In some ways, it's weird that this game exists. But then when you play it, you're like, I'm glad they did this. Like, I'm really glad that someone was like, you know what we need 40 years later? A Giana Sisters game. You know, somebody was like, let's not give it up. Let's actually do the thing. And for real, thank God they did. Anyway, if you've never played this game, you really should. Let me put a final score on it, and then we'll be done. Alright, so Giana Sisters Twisted Dreams. I am giving this game a 9 out of a possible 10 Giana Sisters, and this is what the old school Giana Sisters looked like. Yeah, attractive, pixely. That's how I like my women, like I like these sprites made of pixels. That makes me sound sad. My life is not that sad. Anyway, regardless, people. Yeah, 9 out of 10. Love this game. Really, really excellent game that everybody should play at some point. For real. If you like old school platforming, if you like new school platforming, if you've ever platted a form, you should play this game. Anyway, people, that's going to do it for this one. I will see you in the next one. Okay, bye.